What's up, everyone? If you think we're just going to be sitting on our couch all day watching NFL football, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, because NFL Sundays are back, and we are here for it, helping you get your lineup set.
All right, we got a bunch of injury updates for you and fantasy football experts galore.
Yeah, we got who to chase, who to fade, who's loaded with value.
Yeah, so that's a lot of questions, and we have answers to all of them, and it's right now on The Sweat. Looking beautiful as always. DraftKings is celebrating kickoff Sunday in the National Football League. And we are just here living our best life. Yes, we
As
are.
always.
Live reports from our DK party, by the way, will be coming at you throughout this show.
Also, it's been 624 days since the Browns have won a regular season game.
Okay.
He's Emerson, I'm Jessie, and facts only here on this glorious Sunday morning.
Yeah, let's hit you with a few big names. Few big inactives and other news and notes right now. Houston wide receiver Will Fuller and Devontae Parker of the Dolphins. Okay, they're both out, still dealing with some lingering health issues.
Yeah, unfortunately. And Patriots fans probably going to have to wait to see rookie running back Sonny Michel hit the field. He's still recovering from a knee injury and is reportedly not expected to suit up against Houston.
And in Indianapolis, according to Ian Rappaport, running back Marlon Mack, he's questionable to play, but will have a pregame workout. However, the Colts are expected to have a high level of caution, and he's going to need to show significant improvement in order to hit the field against the Bengals, people.
As for who will likely hit the field, Vikings Pro Bowl corner Xavier Rhodes is expected to play at home against San Francisco, while New Orleans wide receiver Austin Carr will be a surprise starter lining up in the slot after gaining the trust of Drew Brees.
A former undrafted free agent. That's big for him. Let's bring in a couple of our know-it-all analysts, Jeff Ulrich, Julian Edlow, both of DK Live. Guys, good chance Will Fuller doesn't go in Houston. Actually, I can confirm he's out. So who will benefit the most from his absence, Jeff?
I mean, look, it's just going to condense the targets, right? So obviously it should be a good thing for DeAndre Hopkins. And I'll throw this out there. DeAndre Hopkins had his best games with Will Fuller in the lineup last year, so that is something to consider. The guy it should bump up the most, actually, and he makes for a really interesting play this week, in my opinion, is Bruce Ellington. Had a really good connection with Deshaun Watson in the preseason. He's healthy. This is a guy that the Texans have held around the last couple of years. So I think he's going to get a big boost in usage. He had one good game last year, and he's a very capable after-the-catch runner. He's got, good kick returner skills. So 3,400, he's really in play for me today, personally.
What about for you, Julian?
Yeah, Jeff and I have certainly had our debates over the years, but we are on the exact same page right here. And I like what he said about Hopkins. This doesn't necessarily move the needle for me on Hopkins. I thought he was a really good play to begin with. He remains a really good play, but I don't think Fuller's absence necessarily, makes him a must play here for Hopkins. And Ellington at 3,400, you just can't ignore the value there. He's definitely not a cash play, but he has plenty of upside at that cheap price tag against a Patriots defense that is well known for starting seasons off very slow. So Ellington, definitely a GPP value play there.
Yeah, and I mean, let's go over the other options here, Julian, right? Like Kiki Kute, who's like a rookie, right? And then Dammy Coates, who's terrible. So
there's just nothing else there.
Nothing else.
It has to be Ellington.
Yeah.
Now, Julian, per Ian Rappaport, Sonny Michel reportedly out. So really no surprise there. We actually talked about this earlier in the week. And New England, they've got a cast of thousands at running back. So who are the Patriots going to turn to most today against Houston?
Yeah, I mean, Rex Burkhead is obviously going to be the chalky play at 4,200, and I think he should be a very good play. I think he makes a lot of sense in cash, and you can slot him in there in tournaments as well. But I really like James White, and it really doesn't have much to do with Sonny Michel. I mean, James White's going to get his 3, 4, 5 carries, whatever it's going to be, but he's going to be targeted a lot in the passing game just out of necessity. And at $4,000, he's going to be playing some of that Julian Edelman role. He was targeted something crazy, like 30% of the snaps he played in preseason. He had a touchdown catch. Brady was really looking James White's way, and I think he's a sneaky little play for $4,000 with a lot of people jumping on Burkhead for 4,200.
Now, Jeff, you actually had mentioned you were shocked that we were even talking about Sonny Michel earlier in the week. You thought there was no way he was going to play in this game. So who do you think the Pats are going to turn to today?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're rostering a Patriots running back, It's either going to be ecstasy or agony, basically, agony or ecstasy, because one of these guys is probably going to have a massive game, and the other one is probably going to disappoint. And honestly, it could be Jeremy Hill who has the massive game, and Burkhead and White disappoint. But all three of these backs are going to be in the mix. I would agree with Julian. I think James White will get involved in the pass game. Beatty's a little bit older, not pushing the ball down the field as well. The Patriots employed way more passes to their running backs with Dion Lewis, James White towards the end of last season. I would prefer James White, especially in DraftKings PPR scoring. I think Burkhead's got a bit better chance at seeing like a multi-touchdown game personally, and he's definitely going to be in play. But if I really had to pick, it'd be James White. He's cheaper than Burkhead. But again, it really could be any three of these players with a big game, and the other two just don't do that much. So.
Yep, typical Patriots keeping everyone on their toes. Jeff, Marlon Mack, also according to Ian Rappaport, is not going to go today. That news just coming across right now. So how legitimate of an option does rookie Jordan Wilkins become?
I'm not touching anyone in this Indianapolis Colts backfield. Their O-line is bad. None of these backs showed anything in the preseason. Wilkins is not a three-down back. Even Hines, same story. The Colts have just been terrible at drafting running backs, quite frankly, and Marlon Mack, unfortunately, can't be 100% healthy, or he'd probably be in a huge workhorse role. But none of these other backs impressed me at all. I'm not taking a chance on them for fantasy. Maybe one of them catches like a long touchdown. It's a tough matchup against Cincinnati, too, so I'm not going there at all. No interest.
Julian, with Mack out, who interests you in this backfield, if anybody?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Wilkins is certainly the only guy, and just like Jeff said, he's not going to get a lot of interest, so there's some upside to maybe rostering him in a GPP there if you're, playing a lot of lineups, you want to sprinkle him into a lineup, but the only Colt running back that interests me is a healthy Marlon Mack, and we don't have that. So Wilkins, he's in a decent spot. He's very cheap at 3,700, so you can talk yourself into him in a GPP if you're playing multiple lineups. Otherwise, as we said, Hines had like a terrible preseason. He was fumbling all over the place. There's just not a lot of talent here. So this is an avoid for me for the most part with Mack out.
So Julian, Andrew Luck, he's supposed to make his return today to the game. How does Mack being out affect your, would you even look at Luck anymore now? Were you even looking at him in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think it changes it much. Maybe it gives you a slight boost just because these other running backs are pretty bad and they have to throw more out of necessity, more short routes to guys like Jack Doyle, who should be a popular tight end play. Luck was not much on my radar to begin with, and he still is not. But he is a nice pivot play off of some guys that are popular in similar price ranges, like Andy Dalton on the opposite side of this matchup is going to be very popular. You can pay a few $100 more and get Luck and hope that he's the guy that winds up going off, and this is a high-scoring game. But for the most part, I think we have better options at quarterback than to risk playing Luck when we just don't know that much about his health still, somehow.
Jeff, were you ever considering taking the risk with Luck?
I see the upside in Luck just because he's probably going to go a little bit overlooked. And again, he can connect with T.Y. Hilton on a big play, and basically both of them can meet value that like in an instant. At the same time, he really did not look good in preseason to me. He just did not look himself. And again, I come back to this matchup, like Cincinnati's D-line is really, really good. Andrew Luck was getting sacked left and right. He's got a poor O-line. Now he doesn't have his number one running back there to take a little bit of the pressure off. And also, how are these, rookies and stuff going to perform in the pass blocking scenario or, the blocking scenario? I just don't trust this spot at all enough to take a chance. I think there is some upside there because, like I said, T.Y. Hilton is the X factor. Obviously, he can turn like one play into a huge fantasy day. But other than that, I think this is a really risky spot. I'm not personally going there. I like the Cincinnati side better, and I really like the Bengals as a cheap defense, quite frankly.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to continue to bring you the latest updates leading up to kickoff before you guys lock in those lineups.
Yeah, but we actually do want you guys to hang out for a little bit because we're going to go straight into NFL Chase or Fade. So we've got Edlow here. We've dropped Jeff. We're going to bring in Reed. And look at this, Steve Buchanan. Well, Reed got a haircut too. Steve Buchanan here to give us all of their hot takes. This is a trio we haven't had together yet on this show.
Look at this crowd. We like it. We expect there to be a lot of fighting. So let's start out. Steve, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Fresh off a 3-year extension, running back David Johnson is going to light up the Redskins for 20-plus fantasy points in his first action since week 1 of 2017. Steve, chasing or fading?
You know, it's crazy that we're finally getting David Johnson back, and it's like the buzz is not even there because of how expensive he is. Look, this is someone who averaged 23 touches and made 80 catches in 2016, and now he's facing a defense that averaged over 26 DK fantasy points to opposing running backs last season, which rounded out the top 5 in the league. Look, I understand he's expensive, but I feel like you're just going to get the ownership here because everybody's paying down at running back. We have an immense amount of value on this slate that you can get David Johnson in. Don't worry about paying up for him. Just get the guy in there. He's going to go off. He's going to make sure everybody knows he got that extension by showing his play today. Go for it, baby.
Reed, are you going to go for it, baby?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at his ex-Swoba stats and his BVP, no, I mean, I got Buchanan here. I gotta bring out the Woba and the BVP. No, in all seriousness, yeah, David Johnson, he's a chase for me. And you look at that wide receiving core too. You don't really see much outside of Larry Fitzgerald, who is interesting. One of my stacks that we'll get into, but outside of that, you got a guy with David Johnson that didn't have a lower extremity injury. He was just, he hurt his wrist, which obviously is painful and does take time to come back from, but this guy has fresh legs. And when you get a guy potentially almost getting 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving, you could pretty much slate this guy in for about 22 touches to 24 touches in this game. Washington's defense doesn't scare me. Steve's right. They gave up about 26, 27 last year, which was 3rd most. So yeah, absolutely. Washington's defense is a sieve for running back. So yeah, chase.
What do you think, Julian? Are you going to chase or fade this one?
The question is, will David Johnson exceed 20 DK points? I will chase that, but I'll fade that we have to lock him into our lineups. Like, yeah, he's going to have a fine game. Look right below him with Alvin Kamara at 8,500. He's going to be chalky, but he destroyed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 times last year, and that was with Mark Ingram, who is suspended and not going to be playing. Alvin Kamara is the play that you want to pay up for here at running back. He just makes a lot more sense in this matchup. So David Johnson is fine. He's a great pivot play off Alvin Kamara. But if we're talking about the best running back play in this price range, it is Kamara by a mile.
All right, well, as we all know by now, Le'Veon Bell's holdout has officially entered the regular season. So, Reed, chase or fade. No Bell means Antonio Brown will see 15-plus targets today versus Cleveland. Again, talking targets.
Yeah, I'm gonna fade this from a game theory standpoint. I think AB, he's going to benefit the most without Lev Bell in that game. But if you look at that game and what we've seen quite recently is that the weather is supposed to be terrible. So what do? You chase the running backs in this. I still think he gets his 8 to 10 targets because he's the best receiver. And if you don't feed that guy, you're probably not going to win, especially without Lev Bell. 15 plus is a lot. Again, I downgrade these receivers because of that weather. You see high winds as well. So not so much the rain, but the winds do really scare me in Cleveland. AB is still going to get his, right? He's still going to get 8 to 10 touches or 8 to 10 targets, but that forecast looks extremely horrible. So I'm fading it based on game theory, not that he's an extreme talent.
All right, Steve, considering the weather, it's not looking good. Brown's going to cost you $8,600. 15 plus targets here. What are you thinking? Chasing or fading?
You know, I looked up of the 162 snaps without Bell last season. It was actually Juju Smith-Schuster who had the biggest target share at 24%. Granted, Antonio Brown was right there at 22%, but that does kind of raise a little bit of eyebrows there. Look, I am so excited for this game to lock because I'm so sick of hearing about the weather. Like, this has been the week 1 narrative is about the goddamn weather with this game here. I honestly, I socked this game away. I threw away the key. I don't want to think about this game anymore. But I will say in GPPs, it's possible you're going to get Brown at lower than usual ownership because of so much talk about the weather here. It's definitely not the most ideal spot for him, but in those huge GPPs, when you get Antonio Brown, at less than you'd usually expect for ownership, you have to consider it. But for the 15 targets, I think that's a lot there. I'm going to fade that one.
Julian, you going to pay up here for Brown? You could save almost $3,000 going down to Juju Smith-Schuster, and Steve just mentioned had some pretty solid points there.
Yeah, it sounds like we're pretty tired of talking about the weather here, so I'll say this. If conditions were perfect, I would be taking under 15 targets here for Antonio Brown.
Okay.
That's just too big of a number. Although in this game, week 1 at Cleveland last year, Antonio Brown was targeted 11 times. That seems like a more reasonable number, the 10 to 12 range. Even with bad weather, there is no Le'Veon Bell. They have to look to go to Antonio Brown. And AB caught all 11 of those targets last year for 182 yards in week 1. So, yes, you get a downtick there because of the weather. But even so, he's still going to get 10 to 12 targets and likely go over 100 yards. So he's a very safe play unless this weather throws a twist where you just cannot get him the ball in any scenario. I think Antonio Brown is a fine play.
All right, New Orleans is going to be without Pro Bowl running back Mark Ingram for the first 4 games of the season due to that pesky suspension. Julian, even though the Saints have said Alvin Kamara's workload would not increase with Ingram out, do you agree or disagree that he'll get 15-plus carries for the first time in his career today versus Tampa Bay? You mentioned he was the play at running back.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've made it clear how I feel about Kamara. Can I say I don't know if he's going to get 15 carries or not, but he will definitely get well over 15 touches. I don't care if it's carrying the ball or catching the ball. Frankly, I'd rather it be a catch because you get an extra point in PPR. So he is going to get his touches. Let's just say that. It will be more than 15, and Alvin Kamara certainly knows how to make the most of his touches. I'm expecting, obviously, a huge game here. The game script plays right into it. New Orleans is at home. They're the biggest favorite of the week against a Tampa Bay team that just sucks. Alvin Kamara is a fantastic play on this slate.
Steve, Julian thinks he's going to get at least 15 touches. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Saints are massive favorites on this one. They are leading by 10 points at the last time I checked there. But look, I mean, it's not a huge deal. But look, Mike Gillislee and Jonathan Williams are looking to get some work in. And I mean, if this game is a big of a blowout as we're looking at, wouldn't it make sense to get those guys in there over Kamara, just keep him fresh? I mean, either way, he's torched this team in the past. He's averaged 31.5 DK fantasy points with 3 touchdowns against them last season. But like I said, if this game is out of control in the second half, you got to kind of worry a little bit here about what they're going to do here. And I feel like, Julian said that he's the lock play here. We don't have that huge of a lead for the Cardinals game. That's why I really like David Johnson here. So I'm a little bit leery on Kamara than other people are because I just feel like they might want to get some of those other guys some work here. So I think it's definitely possible. But like I said, if this game gets out of control, I'm getting a little worried there.
Hey, that brings up a good point. Reed, are you a little worried that he just simply might not get those minutes?
Yeah, telling off what Steve said and Julian said, I mean, he is sort of game theory in the sense that if they are blowing them out, they're probably not going to want to overwork this guy because they need him for those 4 games. Yes, they bring in Gillislee, but look, Gillislee got cut outside of Jeremy Hill and all these other guys in New England. So I don't really think that he's the answer there. One thing that you will mention, though, with Tampa Bay's defense is absolutely atrocious, whether it's against the run or the pass. Like, the run doesn't scare me as much as their pass defense is. Grimes is out. And so if you look at that offense as well, if they go elsewhere, Ted Ginn is a nice play. You have Cam Meredith, who, again, wasn't really showing much, but you have Michael Thomas, who's essentially locked for 6 catches and 100 yards. So if you're thinking about carries, I agree with Julian that I would say under on the carries, but the touches, you got to assume that this guy's going to get about 17 to 20 touches in terms of just the efficiency that this guy's going to have. And Drew Brees is a nice play as well. So I'm going to say under on the touches, but I do like him or under on the attempts, but I do like him going over in terms of touches.
Well, I know you guys all have seen this news today. The internet's kind of been going crazy because we all just found out. It's been reported Andrew Luck had a snowboarding injury back in 2016.
A secret snowboarding injury.
Which is now no longer a secret, and which is the reason is obviously shoulder was injured. He didn't see him all last year. This is relevant, though, because Luck is taking the field today for the first time since 2016. So, Steve, chase or fade that he's going to put up 20-plus fantasy points against the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm not huge on this matchup. I mean, Jeff said it earlier, the Colts offensive line is just a mess. I have a little more respect than the Bengals defense and people are giving them credit for. And look, Luck is no stranger to turnovers either, so you have to take that into consideration. The Bengals only averaged 16.3 DK fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks last year, which is amongst the lowest in the league. I think Luck is best suited for GPPs only. I'm definitely not paying him in cash. And I mean, look, if he gets bored on the sidelines, who knows? If he takes a dive off the bench or something, he misses his snowboarding. I don't know. You just can't trust this guy at this point. So I'm far away from Luck on this one.
20-plus fantasy points for Luck today, Reed. Chasing or fading?
Yeah, I just want to. I mean, what is Andrew Luck in the slopes like? I mean, that guy might be. That's crazy. I'm going to chase this. What does scare me is Steve's right that Cincinnati's pass defense against quarterbacks, they only allow 16 points to the opposing quarterbacks, which does scare me. But Cincy, they play like the slowest football too in terms of just the game flow. So it does scare me. But Julian mentioned at the top, their running backs in Indianapolis are absolutely atrocious too. I mean, who are you going to run to? Who are you going to go to? So I like Jack Doyle in this spot. I like Andrew Luck. You're getting Andrew Luck at a pretty depressed price here. And so for GPPs, I do like him. For that 20 plus, I'm going to say over on this.
Julian, you like Andrew Luck, $6,100. Doesn't really have anyone to hand off to today with Mac out.
Well, I agree with Reed on Jack Doyle. I think he's going to be a great tight end play and catch a lot of those balls underneath. But there's just no reason to play Andrew Luck. Why should we trust any of this until we see him out on the field? Like, it's week one. There are so many mispriced options that we can take advantage of. If you're making like 10 lineups for GPPs, sure, one of your quarterbacks can be Andrew Luck. But if you're counting on Luck in cash or like have heavy exposure to him in GPPs, you're probably making a huge mistake because we have no reason to do that. Like, week one just has all the value that you need at every position to make your lineups work. And it's just swinging for the fences a little too much for me. So I'm going under 20 points here on Andrew Luck.
Julian, we just found out Tampa Bay rookie running back Ronald Jones, he was second-round pick, is inactive. Does this make this matchup even more favorable for the Saints?
I don't really care about Jones. He was like brutal in preseason. I do care about Peyton Barber, who's $4,100. Maybe if he gets some work in the passing game. The problem is, as we talked about how big of a favorite the Saints are, that's against the Bucs. They stink. So if they're going to be coming from behind, Peyton Barber, it's going to be tough to get him carries. But if he's playing all these downs, Ryan Fitzpatrick likes to check it down. Maybe Peyton Barber has a big game because of the catches here, but that's about all that comes to mind for me.
Reed, what do you think about Austin Carr, wide receiver for the Saints, a former undrafted free agent? He's played in just one game, has 0 catches. He's going to be playing and starting in the slot today. He has earned the trust of the quarterback there, Drew Brees. So a potential fantasy sleeper here?
No, it's not him. If you want to go sleeper with the Saints, it's Traquan Smith. It's Ted Ginn. I mean, like Julian said, we agree on probably 9 things out of 10 because he's a smart individual. But that one thing that I don't agree with, the one thing I don't agree with is that this like you're trying to find a sleeper on the Saints. The Tampa Bay sucks. Like Julian's right. I mean, they are terrible. But it's Traquan Smith if you want. It's Ted Ginn. Grimes is out. Grimes was probably the only cornerback that could have hung with Ted Ginn. And so if you want to find a sleeper there, I'd rather go elsewhere. But Traquan Smith is the one that I would potentially look at if you're looking at rookies.
All right, well, we're going to roll through our Facebook Live video right now. We got a lot of questions pouring in.
So, a lot of people with questions.
Steve, I'd like to start with you here. I'm going to start with the first question that was asked today. So Will Fuller, he is not going to play, wide receiver in Houston. Does Deshaun Watson get downgraded a little bit here against the Patriots with Fuller out?
I mean, look, if the Patriots are going to go up as big as they are, I mean, he's going to be throwing. I mean, that's going to be the thing here. There's going to be a lot of points put up in this game. I mean, I think the thing is that how well are they going to defend Hopkins? I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing here. And then we also have Ellington, who's so cheap today that I feel like he's going to be a great value play. We'll talk about him some more later on. But I mean, that doesn't really bother me too much. This is going to be such a high-scoring game. Ball's going to be flying all over the place. I still like Watson and GPPs especially.
Reed, we got another question on here. Are we eating all the lovely chalk this slate when it comes to Christian McCaffrey?
I mean, I think so. I mean, he's sort of matchup proof, right? I mean, Christian McCaffrey in this spot is fine. You get him at that $6,000, price relief off the top of the guys that, especially we're talking about David Johnson, Kamara. So yeah, I do think that you want to eat the chalk Christian McCaffrey because you don't think CJ Anderson in the preseason was essentially non-existent, and all of the reports of Norv Turner using Christian McCaffrey as much as he wanted to was true in the preseason. So I'm going to chase that. Yeah, eat the chop.
Julian, Rex Burkhead or Connor today?
Ooh, I think I would lean Connor there. As Jeff and I kind of talked about off the top, I think both of us like James White a little bit more than Rex Burkhead because of the PPR scenario there. But Connor, obviously, the Steelers' backfield is clear. Le'Veon Bell is not there, and James Conner is, and he's going to get that work. Whereas with the Patriots, it could be Burkhead, it could be White, it could even be Jeremy Hill, like Jeff touched on. So I think Connor's the safer play there just because we know he has to get the workload.
All right, boys, hang tight. We're going to use you a little later in the show because we do have an hour and a half to fill, and we're taking everyone up to kickoff until the rosters are locked in. For now, though, let's wish a good Sunday morning to Adam Kaufman. He's coming to us live from the DraftKings Kickoff Bash at the Pilsner House in Hoboken. So, my dude, what's the vibe like there? Because the Giants face a ginormous test against the Jaguars, is what I'm being told.
Well, obviously, we could talk quite a bit about the Giants and Jaguars game. That's about an hour or so from now and only about 20 minutes from where we are off in the Meadowlands. We're in Hoboken, so there's a lot to talk about with that game. We can get to that. But as far as the scene right here at the Pilsner House, I'll tell you, right now, everyone's getting ready. It's a little bit quiet because the doors don't officially open until noon. But at that point, it should get out of control. We're expecting 200-300 people here to come watch football. But it's not just me that'll be here because nobody cares that I'm here. Mike Francesa, the sports pope, former athletes, New York star athletes, Tiki Barber, Nick Mangold, Brandon Jacobs, they will all be here. So it's going to be a good scene, good crowd. People will be taking pictures, signing autographs, and most importantly, sweating their lineups. That's what we're all fired up about.
Adam, so what's the conversation like around there? How excited are people, obviously, to see Odell back after being paid, but then you're going to see rookie running back Saquon Barkley go up against the best defensive line in the league?
Well, this should be a great game. There's a lot of excitement surrounding this game for a variety of reasons. You got to remember, for one, obviously the team that's visiting the Meadowlands, the Jaguars. This team surprised everybody last year, reaching the AFC Championship game. The investment, the rise in the stock of the Bort coin, will that repeat in 2018? Blake Bortles, can he do it again? But they were led to that AFC title game, the narrow loss to the Patriots for a chance to go to the Super Bowl by that defense and Jalen Ramsey, who's got himself a very tough matchup today because on the Giants side, you've got a healthy team. This team was abysmal last year. 3-13, eked to the finish, largely because of injuries, not just defense, but mainly offense. You had OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., he got hurt. Sterling Shepard got hurt. Brandon Marshall, who's now gone, he got hurt. It was really just Eli Manning and Evan Ingram for the most part. Even Eli got benched toward the end of the year before they decided to bring him back and during the offseason cut Davis Webb. So it is the Eli show. They beefed up the left side of the offensive line to actually maybe give the veteran QB a little bit of protection, but Odell is healthy. He's one of the best receivers in football. We know that. He has to deal with the top cornerback in football in Jalen Ramsey, who loves himself some trash talk. It probably pained him to even say that OBJ is good, which he did during that famous article in the offseason where he ripped on just about everybody else. Sterling Shepard is back. You have Evan Ingram is healthy. He is ready to go. And, of course, Saquon Barkley, number 2 pick out of Penn State, who is expected to be elite. There's a lot of hype there. This is arguably as good an offense as Eli Manning has ever had. And this guy has won a couple of Super Bowls. So should be a lot of fun this afternoon. And maybe, just maybe, the Giants can actually upset him.
All right, Adam, thank you so much. We'll be checking back in with you throughout the morning live from the Pilsner House, the DraftKings Kickoff, so stick around for more from him.
Pat Mayo here with an exciting new way to heat up your Sundays this football season. DraftKings has teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings to bring you a fantasy experience like no other. Blazin' Fantasy Football, a new free game only available inside Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Want to win free wings for a year, game tickets, Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, or Blazin' Rewards points? Here's how. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, download the Blazin' Rewards app, and join. Already a member? Not a problem. Just log in and fire up the app. Click or tap the Blazin' Fantasy Football icon, join a contest, draft your lineup, and get ready to compete against rivals in all Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Blaze your way up the leaderboard by drafting who you think to be the top 8 players, including kickers. Best part, you've got a chance to really rack up the score with your blazing pick. It's worth double points, so choose wisely. Don't just wing it. Draft your team in one of Sunday's 4 contests before each half of the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. Then, grab some wings, sit back, and watch your team light up the leaderboard. Come back every Sunday for new contests each week. DraftKings and Buffalo Wild Wings, the right stack for Sundays.
I'm really hungry, actually, after seeing all
after
of that.
seeing all those wings.
I can't wait to get out here and eat.
Welcome back to The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He is Emerson Lotzia, and we're getting you set on NFL Sunday.
Yes, we are. So let's bring in a couple studs here to drop even more knowledge on you because the clock is ticking. We have 1 hour till kickoff. Pat Mayo is up in the 6, also joined by Mr. Thorne himself. Take it away, boys.
Thanks a lot, Emerson. So I'm here, Pat Mayo, and if you missed the 10 a.m. live show, you might want to get on that for next Sunday. Get 3 hours of live coverage right before week 2, and then week 3, and then week 4. But today, myself and Gary and Thorne are going to be talking to you about our lock plays of the day. This is always fun when we talk about locks because what could go wrong when it comes down to this?
As always, that's a big lock, but that's also a big shoe. These are the things you have to weigh, really, Pat.
So the things that we're going to do, I'm going to hit the inactives right away. We're going to get into the locks, and then we'll take a few questions from the YouTube chat. They're loving the Facebook over there in Boston and Toronto. We'll hit up the loyalists on YouTube. So if you have some start sits, load them in right now before we get out of here. Inactive, Sony Michel, Will Fuller. We talked about Bruce Ellington and Ryan Griffin briefly on my show. I think that Griffin's actually kind of a nice, sneaky tight end play here. Devontae Parker is going to be inactive. Light up some Kenny Stills. Maybe use some Danny Amendola as well for DraftKings scoring where you got full PPR. Ronald Jones ain't playing. He's inactive. So unless you think Jaquiz Rodgers is going to be in passing situations, fire up Peyton Barber. I'm starting to lean Peyton Barber over Rex Burkhead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real tough game script when you start projecting it out. But at the
Unless
same time,
if he's on the field during passing downs, he's going to be great. He's $4,100.
It's true. I mean, look,
You're playing James White, and you can play a guy who might touch the ball 30 times.
I'm not playing James White. Let me make that.
I heard a lot
clear.
of James White. Ulrich was on and play James White.
I've also heard James White. Yeah, let's just say Rex Burkhead is going to be better than James White this week, first and foremost. Peyton Barber's completely fine. I think, like you said, if I could see Jaquiz Rodgers getting the passing down work, that's kind of what his game is. But if, let's even say he gets half of the passing down work in this game, Peyton Barber, we're now looking at someone who probably has about a 65 to 70% snap share in this offense and is probably going to see 18 to 21 targets. Or excuse me, 18 to 21 touches.
All right, don't tell Mark Morrison because there is no return of the Mac this week. Marlon Mack out once again. Jordan Wilkins a viable play, but no lock because he still might be splitting with Naheem Hines. He might be with the old Christine Michael.
I don't mind
hear his name again.
I don't mind tossing him in a couple lineups as a flyer. I think
that depends on how many you're playing.
That's fair. That is a very good point. How many lineups? And
he's no lock. When we get to the locks, he's not a lock.
He's not a lock.
He is cheap though.
There's so many cheap running backs. That's the problem.
Peyton Barber's right there. Who would you play?
Between the two, I'd play Barber. But at the same time, if people are leaning towards Barber, I think if no one's on Wilkins, he could be a nice little contrarian.
All right, the last inactive I want to bring up, Cam Meredith is inactive for the Saints and reported earlier from Ian Rappaport, Austin Carr is going to start at slot receiver. That's an absolute flyer of all flyers.
Yes.
Worth a pickup in season-long fantasy, though.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Just to see what happens.
Do I think that necessarily Cam Meredith won't have the playbook down pat by week 2, week 3? It's possible. But we saw this play out last year with Willie Snead where we kept a guy on our benches in season long for 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, the suspension obviously played a bigger part there, but we kept him on our benches for so long, hoping that at some point he would become a vital part of this offense again. But we shouldn't forget that, one, Mark Ingram's going to be back in a couple of weeks.
And tripping over the 2-yard line like he loves to.
That's fine, but as long as he's getting the carries, that's passes that Drew Brees isn't throwing. And we saw last season, Brees had some of the worst numbers of his career, not even just in terms of like his efficiency numbers, but his volume. He just did not have the volume we're used to seeing in these Saints offenses. They are extremely content to run the football because they're really, really good at it.
All right, so let's get to these must plays. Let's start with number 1. I think it's been the chatter all week. And I'll ask you a pivot question in here. Alvin Kamara is the must-play running back on the slate, especially with Bell off of it. He's super expensive. You can play with the Saints D. I think that's a nice correlation play and a bit of way to save some money, although the Saints D is pretty pricey as well. But he's going to be like 35% owned. I'm willing to eat that chalk. You do like David Johnson as the pivot coming in. Yeah. Same upside, but 1/6 the ownership.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the exact same upside, really. I think he's going to be vital in the passing game, as we've always seen. He's going to be someone who, as he's always been, might lead the league in snaps played this season if he remains healthy. Like one of 7 running backs going back to 2016 when, oh, by the way, he had 20 touchdowns and over 2,100 yards of total offense. He's someone who's going to be on the field. 1 of 7 guys to play 75% of his team snaps at the running back position. I don't see why that changes in week 1, especially considering right now the backup running back in Arizona is a rookie. And that's not saying this guy can't get on the field necessarily.
You don't love Chase Edmonds?
There's nothing wrong. I mean, he's got handcuff value, but he's not going to see the field a whole lot in week 1.
Would you say that he would be the wreck of the Edmonds-Fitzgerald?
Uh,
There's a lot of Gordon Lightfoot potential team naming with the Arizona Cardinals
yeah,
this year.
I'm sure the crossover market, the Venn diagram of DraftKings users and Gordon Lightfoot listeners is basically a circle. So I'm with you on that. I'm not saying that you can't play or shouldn't play Kamara, especially in a cash game format. I think he's a lock in a cash game. But I think David Johnson's a cash game play too. So
Well, it's hard to get them both in. You can do it.
It's actually not
can,
impossible.
yeah, but then
This is the week to do that.
Well, that's the thing. Then you're dealing with bad receivers. I mean, there are value receivers you can go to, but in terms of locks, I'm using AJ Green from that $7,000 tier. Like, there's a bunch of good plays. Michael Thomas is in there. Keenan Allen is in there.
The top 5, if we're not talking about weather, the top 5 receivers priced this
Well,
week.
like
all have
I
great
always
matchups.
say, when it pertains to the rain, are the players made of sugar? If they're not going to melt. They're going to be on the field. It's the wind.
Tis the wind, exactly.
Tis the wind
Patrick.
that concerns me a little bit more. And I would still use Brown, just not in cash games.
No,
But I would use AJ Green. He's a price discount. He's going to get all the volume. It's a great matchup against Indianapolis in a game where they're underdogs and projected to pass a lot.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like an Andy Dalton, but people aren't playing AJ Green. That seems weird.
yeah, that seems odd. I will say, and like I said, I think if you are playing Dalton, there's no reason not to stack that game.
I'm just not using Dalton. I'm just using AJ Green.
That's probably a fair philosophy. I've got Dalton in a couple lineups this week, not as many as I have Phillip Rivers in. And I think Phillip Rivers is one of my locks this week. I mean, you look at the Chiefs defense, even before we found out that Eric Berry was not going to suit up in this game, I don't think that to me wasn't the factor where it made me go, oh, I need to get Phillip Rivers in my lineups now. That was just, oh, Phillip Rivers is already in my lineups. This is just the continuation of good times that I think Rivers is going to have. 12.7 yards per reception last season. Only the Colts were worse. And if you're in the same class as the Colts in anything when it comes to pass defense, it's not the best thing in the world. Also, 64.7% against the Chiefs. Wide receivers were targeted last season. That was the highest share of any receiving core in the NFL. So I think that means you can easily project and stack Rivers with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I like Mike Williams a lot.
That's the third part of that stack. You wouldn't play Antonio Gates or Tyrell Williams.
Not a lock. Certainly not a lock.
All right. Well, you like James Conner as a lock.
Yes.
I think I would rather play Peyton Barber for the price discount.
That's a fair assessment, but I think
And far fewer people are playing Peyton Barber
yes,
than James.
that would be the reason to maybe venture away from James Conner. But I think I've said this before. I think he's a free space on this slate. You look at the history of the games Le'Veon Bell has not suited up since he's been in the NFL. 18 games. The running back replacing him has averaged 20 and a half touches per game over that 4-year span. I just don't see why that changes. I mean, the backup running back for the Steelers is Jalen Samuels. We don't even know if this guy's a tight end or a running back yet. So
Hey, they have Stephen Ridley.
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 He's going to fumble the first carry he gets, and we won't have to worry about him anymore. I just think that Connor in this spot, maybe even with, to talk about the weather concerns again, maybe the Steelers rely a little bit more on the running game and try to not put the ball so much in Ben's hands, considering he's also just been bad on the road. So I think Connor at that volume share in that offense, I know the team implied total has gone down significantly in the last 48 hours, but I don't think that's enough to scare me off of Connor. I have him in virtually every lineup I have.
All right, let's hit some of these YouTube questions very quickly. If you're out there watching right now, load them in. We'll try to rapid fire through this before we throw back to the DraftKings studios. Mahomes or Cousins? Playing Cousins.
Yeah, it's Cousins.
Yeah, it's close though. I like Mahomes.
It's not far, but I think Mahomes is a better like GPP play than he is a season-long play.
Flex play, Jordan Wilkins or Evan Ingram? I play Wilkins.
Yeah, I try to avoid flexing tight ends.
This guy just asked, does Deshaun Watson get running yards? Question mark. I'm going to say he'll get at least 2 because that would be yards.
That would fill the qualifications, yes.
Would you ever sit Fournette or Zeke? I don't think I would.
No, I'm not on Zeke as a DK play this week, but you're not sitting Zeke Elliott.
Fournette or Elliott based on matchup? I think based on matchup, it's Fournette, but I still think that's really close. I'll lean Zeke still. But Fournette is very much in that same discussion.
Fournette has the better matchup. I think Zeke, just in terms of overall volume, and I don't necessarily believe it, but at least there's more opportunity for Zeke to be involved in the passing game than I think we'll see at a Fournette today.
Hyde or Connor?
Connor
for me as well. I was going to say last one here before we throw back, but it doesn't look like there is one.
So just play James Conner.
Here we go. Drop one for a season-long team. Although this guy says he wants to keep Rashad Penny, and that's a terrible idea. So would you drop Lockett, Shepard, Geronimo, Allison, or Rashad Penny? Penny, right?
I'd probably just drop Allison.
I like
honestly.
Allison. What if someone gets hurt on Green Bay? Then you got a wide receiver too with Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball.
Yeah,
Against
but
a
you could
backup
also,
running back on a team that
you
can't
could also
run
just
anything.
have an RB1 in Penny if Chris Carson's just bad, which is on the table.
Barber or Corey Davis? I play Barber.
Barber, yeah.
Stills, Barber, or Carson? I play Barber.
Yeah, Barber.
All right.
Carson's not in a great spot today.
All right.
I like most of that Seattle defense. Or excuse me, that Seattle offense. Just not Chris.
I do like a more shootout potential in that game than people may think. Gary and Thorne, follow him on Twitter at Gary and Thorne. Follow me at the PME. Gary will be back on the sweat a little bit later on, so stay tuned. We'll throw it back to the DK studios. Emerson, Jesse, take it away.
Cool. Great stuff, guys. As always, we appreciate the knowledge. Everyone hang tight. We see your questions coming in on Facebook. We will answer them, as well as Jeff, Reed, and Bukes will give us their anchor picks right after this.
Welcome to $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. When you're trying to win it all, you need to separate yourself from the crowd, right? So we're going to identify some of the diamonds in the rough, the hidden gems, players with major upside and big potential returns. Let's welcome in our $1 Million panel, Adam Levitan and Reed Fowler. Guys, welcome.
How's it going?
All right, well, Levy, who do you think can have a $1 million impact this weekend? Give me a couple of guys.
All right, yeah, I would say my favorite maybe contrarian stack or low-owned stack for week one would be the Bengals. The Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, stack that up with John Ross, throw A.J. Green in there, Tyler Eifert. You could even throw in some Gio Bernard, maybe some Joe Mixon, some combo of those guys against this Colts team, which to me is absolutely devoid of talent on the defensive side. And actually, Andy Dalton has fantasy potential. We saw him not too long ago, back in 2013, finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback on a per game basis. So I think the Bengals are going to play really well here, and I think they'll light up this Colts defense.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts defense is devoid of any sort of superstar, right? I mean, they lost their middle linebacker, so I do like that pick. One guy I'm looking at, especially in GPPs, is John Brown, 3,700 with the Ravens. Look, in 2012, when Flacco was the Super Bowl MVP, he had 3 receivers in the top 25 in terms of yards per catch. And Flacco was top 10 in yards per reception. So John Brown at 3,700, if you want to go expensive somewhere else, I think that's a fine place to find a potential flyer who gives you touchdown upside. Buffalo does have a staunch D, but in terms of what you're getting at 3,700, John Brown would be my favorite pick down there. And then the Jags defense, not necessarily a contrarian pick, but if you look at where they're priced next to the Ravens defense going up against Buffalo, I think you're going to have lower ownership on a defense that is stout at every level. And yes, Eli has weapons to throw to, but I mean, he's going to be in for a long time, especially with that front 7. So I do like the Jags defense as well.
Lev, you buying on those?
Yeah, I think the Jags defense is fine. Certainly a mismatch between the Giants offensive line and the Jaguars defensive line. I also like a couple other defenses. I like the Broncos defense. I like the Bengals defense, but I do think that the Ravens, as Reed mentioned, is going to be the highest owned. And speaking of ownership, one thing about the John Brown play, Keelan Cole is going to soak up a ton of ownership at 3,800. So I think both John Ross and John Brown will have a little bit less ownership than they should.
All right, thanks again to our $1 Million panel. Enjoy the games. We'll see you next week on $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com.
Welcome back to The Sweat, ladies and gentlemen, your one-stop shop for the latest fantasy news every night here on DraftKings on Facebook at 6 o'clock Eastern Time and Sunday mornings here at 11:30 for an hour and a half.
Yeah, going to be really exciting. Time for anchor picks with the three-headed monster of Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, and look who we have here, Mr. Steve Buchanan. Reed, who's the one player that you have to have in your lineup?
Yeah, it's going to be A.J. Green versus Indianapolis. We touched on it a few times. And for whatever reason, like Pat was saying, a lot of guys are talking about Andy Dalton, not so much about A.J. Green. Like Indianapolis, I do like Keenan Allen a little bit cheaper, but Indianapolis was worse in sack percentage, around 10%, and they've given up about 6 yards per play, which is another beautiful metric for the offense. And A.J. Green is going up against not Vontae Davis. And so when you have A.J. Green, the implied total of that game is around 47, 48, I believe, last time I checked. You got to go with one of the best receivers, one of the best possession receivers. I know you have Mixon there. I know you have Eifert, who's a touchdown maven. But give me A.J. Green as my anchor in that what seems to be a heavily cited Cincinnati game.
Jeff, who's your pick and how trash is Reed's?
I mean, on the Reed trash scale, it's like 80%, I guess.
That's actually fairly low.
It could be worse. I got 20%. I'll take it.
Like Cameron Meredith, who's not even playing, I guess. But no, I'm going to go a little bit off the wall, I guess. I don't really think it's that awful. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill as my lock. And when you're looking at the games today, I just don't understand why people aren't more over the KC offense. You got Joey Bosa banged up for the LA Chargers. You've got a little bit of a banged up secondary too. And you look back what Tyreek Hill did last year. I mean, he dropped five catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown on Desmond King, who he's probably going to be matched up with again. So that was on low target volume. Now look what Mahomes and Tyreek Hill did in the preseason. Patrick Mahomes targeted Tyreek Hill on almost 50% of his passes. I think you're going to get a really high volume of targets for Tyreek Hill in this game. I think you're going to get a high volume of targets for Tyreek Hill all year. I think you might get a bit of a Ben Antonio situation developing between these two. And why not jump on it right off the bat? Why be scared? I mean, he's only $6,500. He's a lot less expensive than some of the other elite wide receivers, and he's got the big playability. So for me, I think Tyreek Hill is in a great spot this week.
Yeah, I believe you also said like a month or so ago you think Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for like 4,000 yards or something crazy like that, right? I know Reed remembers.
Yeah,
one game.
Yeah, and he also said Minnesota's defense was trash and overrated.
Yeah, seriously, Jeff.
I didn't say trash. I just said
no.
overrated.
You said trash. We have it on tape, buddy.
Roll the tape. Just kidding. We don't have that ability right now. Steve, I saw you nodding like you agreed and thought Jeff had a good pick, and I also saw you hysterically laughing when I asked how trash Reed's was. So what do you think of their picks, and what's yours?
Well, I mean, I feel like the third wheel. These guys have such a rapport, and I'm like the new guy here, so I'm not gonna trash on anybody just yet. Give me a couple of weeks.
That's not like you, Buchanan.
Hey, playing nice. It's week 1. Wait till we get to like week 6. It's full force, cutthroat here.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Larry Fitz here, 6,600. I absolutely love this spot for him at a good salary. I mean, look, he's gonna draw Fabian Moreau in coverage most of the time. He was targeted on 29% of his routes last season, which was amongst the highest in the league. And then you look at the salary spot that Fitz is in here. He's just above Stephon Diggs and Chris Hogan. I mean, who do you think is going to have the higher ownership between the three of those guys? It's not going to be Fitz. Diggs is really popular. Hogan, potentially the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots today. I mean, those are guys people are going to be looking at, and Fitz is not even going to get a bat of an eye here. I think Old Reliable is going to have a great spot here. He's in a plus matchup. I mean, I think there's lots to love. And like I said, I think the ownership is 100% going to be on your side in both cash and GPPs. So fire up Fitz if you can.
Hey, when you can pick a guy who gets up at like 4:30 in the morning and goes for mall walks, why not, right? Like
in the sweatsuit, matching top and bottom, yeah. I'll take Fitz too.
Yeah, he's ready for it, baby. He's ready.
With like the white K-Swiss shoes on. Yeah, I feel you on that. Hey, guys, a few questions. Actually, we have a lot coming in on Facebook, so let's rip through a few of them. Reed, Zeke or Kamara? Steve Roth is asking that question.
Oh, Kamara, no question. I mean, he's in line for a big game. So I understand the Zeke question because, like, who else are they going to go to? But, like, don't be cute. I hate to be repetitive with Julian's don't be cute phrase there, but it's Kamara.
What about this, Jeff? We have Frank Gore scores his age today. Kind of a statement, but do you agree or disagree?
What? No.
No shot.
Like 5 touches. No. Okay, what is he, like 51? So he's going to get 5.1.
Very dark for him.
He's actually 64. Hey, Steve, better flex, James White or Jordan Reed?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. The only thing is I think at least Reed, as long as he's on the field, will actually get some play here. With White, it's just so hard to know how much play he's actually going to get here. The Patriots always throw in this, we think we have an understanding of who they're going to play, then they absolutely go the other direction. I mean, to say what Jeff said, I like Jeremy Hill a lot here today. I think Hill's going to be the sneaky one here, so I'm not going to go with White there.
All right, thanks, guys. And to everybody watching, keep your questions rolling in on Facebook. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Right now, though, let's bring in Adam Kaufman, who's coming to us live from the DraftKings Kickoff Bash at the Pilsner House, and he's breaking down some NFL storylines with Greg Ehrenberg.
Hey guys, thanks very much. As you can see probably behind me a little bit, the doors are open. People are starting to show up. And of course, this guy, Greg Ehrenberg, who is literally from this establishment, he told me. He's really excited to be here. Greg, what's going on, bud?
Not much. I was conceived in the kitchen, and they let me come out to do a show, so it's pretty cool.
You don't want to eat food from in there, though. That is gross. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about this big game that's coming up only about 20 miles or 20 minutes, I should say, away from here, right around the corner practically, and that is, of course, the Giants and the Jaguars. This is going to be a tough matchup, but one of the very exciting things is the fact that we're going to see Saquon Barkley for the first time. He tweaked his hammy last month, but he's expected for a full workload. This is the number 2 pick out of Penn State. Big thing people are wondering, who are thinking about putting him in their lineups, is over under 100 rushing yards. Can he do it today?
Yeah, so this is a really tough matchup. The Jacksonville Jaguars last year, number 1 overall defensive DVOA last year. And then also, if you go to DraftKings.sportsbook.com, you'll see the Jaguars currently listed as 3-point favorites. So what's the significance of this? The game script doesn't really set up for Barkley to be picking up a lot of rushing yards. I do think he's going to have a good game, and I think he's going to be involved in the passing game also. But in terms of 100 rushing yards, I'm going to take the under on that number.
All right, how about Odell Beckham Jr.? As we know, missed a considerable amount of last year dealing with the injury. He's back. He's got the fat new contract, highest paid receiver in the entire NFL. And Jalen Ramsey's been very vocal about the fact that he intends to go out there and shut him down. Here in week 1, are we going to see the same old OBJ?
Yeah, well, what do we mean by the same old OBJ? Do we mean the one who was putting up 100 receiving yard games every game? Or are we talking about the guy who was throwing tantrums, was kicking over? Yeah, so I think there's a good chance that we get the old OBJ is in the one who throws tantrums a lot. Once again, the Jaguars still number 1 defensive DVOA in the league last year, number 1 pass defense. He's probably going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey, the best cover cornerback in football. So I do think that Beckham has a good year, but in this matchup, I think we should go elsewhere.
Well, some, if not all, of OBJ's success is going to depend on Eli Manning, 37-year-old quarterback. And as we know, there was a lot of noise during the offseason right around the draft with the fact that Saquon Barkley was drafted in the first place, because it was, oh, my God, we got to rely on Eli Manning again around here. Because, again, the guy's pushing 40. He was benched at one point last year for Geno Smith, of all people, only played in 15 games. He didn't have a good year, about 3,500 yards, 19 touchdowns, 13 picks, fumbled the ball 10 times. But can he bounce back?
Well, those are some really nice things you said about Eli Manning. I'm sure that the Giants fans behind you would be super excited to hear that.
His parents too, and they're watching for sure.
But here's the thing with Eli. He should be better than he was last year just by the fact that he's so many weapons around him. Beckham's back healthy. Ingram's healthy now. He was dealing with a concussion in the offseason. Barkley, obviously, with the second overall.
Sterling Shepard.
Sterling Shepard also.
Ingram.
I already said it.
I'm sorry. Well, I wasn't listening.
That's fair enough. I don't blame you.
No, you're great.
But here's the deal. Eli Manning is not good at this point in his career, but he's going to be better than last year just because he can't be worse than he was last year. He's not going to get benched again, but all he needs to do is just be like an average to slightly below average quarterback, and he should have a decent fantasy year with the targets around him. But once again, today isn't the day to target him.
Yeah, truthfully, I just wanted to say Evan Ingram twice because he's on both of my season-long teams. I got a lot of stock in the Evan Ingram camp. What are realistic expectations for Eli for this season, though? Never mind just today and bouncing back, because as you said, arguably the best offense he's ever had around him.
Yeah, so the reasonable expectation is that he's probably going to be a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. I don't think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be so bad that they have to bench him. But I think that he'll be acceptable and he should be okay with the guys around him.
All right. How about, during this show, it's we've had a variety of football analysts on because, I mean, hey, it's all about the NFL slate today in week 1 and everybody being excited. They want to know, who are the locks? Who are the guys that you have to have in your lineup, you have to have exposure to? We've heard locks from a variety of analysts that have been on this show already, but who's the guy, if you could boil it down to 1, maybe 2, that you have to have in your lineups today?
Yeah, so I like David Johnson a lot today. I think Alvin Kamara is going to be super popular, and for really good reason. Kamara is a great play today. You look at David Johnson, who's priced about the same as Kamara. I think you go a little bit under-owned in GPPs with really a similar amount of upside. And then also consider that Kamara, the Saints have said they kind of want to be conservative with the amount of touches he gets this year. I think we could see a lot of play for David Johnson, and I think that he probably has a higher baseline amount of touches versus Kamara.
So I wonder on Kamara real quick, and I know we got to send it back, but is it that they're going to be conservative with his touches or they're going to be conservative with his carries? Because I know they don't want to run him into the ground with Mark Ingram out, but doesn't that mean we could possibly see even more usage out of him as a pass catcher?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be involved in the passing game, and I do think he's a fine play today, but I'm just kind of comparing the ownership of what I expect for Kamara versus David Johnson. I think we could see Kamara somewhere around the 40% range, and then David Johnson maybe like 10 to 15%. I think that for that kind of leverage with similar upside, I'll go to the lower owned guy.
Well, David Johnson is your lock today, and I drafted Le'Veon Bell ahead of him in my season long, so feeling really great today. Greg Ehrenberg, DK Live. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I think Le'Veon Bell, good contrarian play today.
Yeah, I definitely have. No. Connor, all day you've been hearing about him throughout the show. Back to the studio and you guys.
Thanks, Adam. Earlier this week, I caught up with Adam Levitan of the DFS Edge and DK Live editor Alex Jankowski to get their insight on Week 1. Hey there, everybody. Jessie Coffield along with DK Live's Alex Jankowski and Adam Levitan here to help you make your pick for DraftKings NFL Pick'em presented by Papa John's. All right, we're targeting 3 games with interesting storylines. First up, Houston at New England. Alex, does Deshaun Watson's return mean big things for the Texans?
I think it does, at least in Week 1. But let's get one thing straight. First off, right off the bat, Week 1, it's no fun picking New England. Come on, who wants to honestly pick the Patriots? And it's not just Deshaun Watson. You got a healthy Will Fuller, J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless on the defensive end. This game last year was pretty close, 36-33. And has New England gotten any better or worse since then? Remember, Brandon Cooks in that game, 5 catches, 131 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now he gone. Julian Edelman still gone. Yeah, I get you got Hightower back on defense, but you also lose Matt Patricia. You lose Malcolm Butler, although Bill Belichick might not have played him anyways, even if he was still on the team. But defensive performances, I know that they vary year after year, but do we really think this New England defense will be any better than it was last year? I think I choose this game differently if it's in the postseason. But come on, Week 1, 31 fan bases. We're all hoping this is the year that New England falters, so I'll go with the Texans.
Adam, you heard Alex mention it. It was a close matchup last season, but the Pats did come out on top. Anything different this year?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about sample size here. If you look at his performance, it's just a massive outlier relative to every other quarterback in the league. I think he regresses this year, particularly considering they're armed with arguably the league's worst offensive line. I think that's a big problem. I think the Patriots defense is underrated here, and the Patriots, I think, will find a way. I don't think it'll be easy, but I think they'll find a way at home through Rex Burkhead, through James White, through Chris Hogan, through Rob Gronkowski, and through Tom Brady. I think they'll find a way here.
Moving on to Steelers-Browns. Alex, what side of this matchup do you think has the edge?
I'm going Cleveland here, and honestly, I don't even think it's as far-fetched as I was picking Houston over the Patriots. Another exact repeat of Week 1 last year. Steelers won 21-18, but the Browns, at least on the field, across the board, are much better than they were last year. Starting at quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, he's probably not winning you a lot of shootouts this year, but these games between these two teams are always going to be pretty close. He's just not going to make the boneheaded red zone turnovers that Deshaun Kaiser did pretty much every game that he played in last year. I think they'll be able to move the ball a little bit with Carlos Hyde, Jarvis Landry, Duke Johnson, etc. And then you got a healthy Myles Garrett going up against Big Ben on the road. Reminder, 10 fewer DK points, more than 10 fewer DK points average on the road for Big Ben versus when he's at home. And then you got maybe Le'Veon Bell. I mean, he was pretty quick to refute that report that he's going to be coming in and joining the team this weekend. So we'll have to see. But even if he does, 13 touches for 47 yards in this exact same circumstance after sitting out the preseason last year. So I'll go with Cleveland here to start things off on a high note.
Adam, lots of fantasy weapons on Pittsburgh. Can Cleveland stop them?
Yeah, I actually agree with a lot of Alex's points here. This Cleveland team is extremely talented, and you could argue that they have some of the best young talent in the entire league. What we've seen, though, is just inept coaching game after game. They've had so many fourth quarter leads, second half leads that they just blow and blow and blow. And I think maybe not because of Deshaun Kaiser, but more because of coaching. And that's really the big difference here. To me, I think Hugh Jackson is absolutely inept. But just from a skills perspective, from a talent perspective, I do think the Browns will play very well. And if you could give me 5 or 6 points, I'd certainly take the Browns.
Now, Washington made a big move in the offseason in acquiring Alex Smith. Adam, when you look at their matchup, how big of an influence is he in deciding which side to pick?
Yeah, Alex Smith has long been one of my least favorite fantasy quarterbacks, but the dude wins games. And I think that's really big for the Redskins, just to get someone in there who's settled down and played really consistently. Meanwhile, speaking of settling down, the Cardinals come in with scheme changes on offense and defense. Secondary is really bad outside of Patrick Peterson, another really bad offensive line. And the Redskins quietly, I think, will have one of the best pass rushes in the league. Ryan Kerrigan and Preston Smith out there. So I think it'll be a really close game, and going on the road is certainly never easy for a mediocre team like the Redskins, but I think they'll find a way here to squeeze one out.
Alex, the Cardinals also made some offseason moves, but are they enough to win this game?
Look, I can say two things with certainty. One, you're not getting Sam Bradford for 16 games. Two, you're not getting Sam Bradford for 6 games. But I think you get him for 1 game, and that's all we're talking about here in Week 1. You combine that with the return of David Johnson. You got the swan song with Larry Fitzgerald. New coach, new enthusiasm there at home with a team traveling across the country. I like Arizona in a tight matchup here. I'm not looking at what Alex Smith did last year in Kansas City, where he inexplicably became like the best deep ball passer in the league. Now he's on a non-Andy Reid coach team with fewer weapons as well. I mean, Jamison Crowder, I think he's good with what he does. And Josh Dotson is supposed to be a breakout. At least that's what everyone on Twitter is telling me. But after that, you got Jordan Reed, who, he's just not reliable. And then you got Adrian Peterson, who even if he is effective, he's not catching the ball out the backfield. He needs 20 to 25 touches at his age. Good luck with that. I like Arizona in this game, at least with all that energy that comes with having the new coach and things like that, and all the other things that I mentioned. I think they get this one out at home.
Alex, Adam, thanks for the insight and the picks. Welcome back to The Sweat. We're talking top Sunday stacks. We got Gary and Thorne, Reed Fowler, and Rosalie Michaels, a.k.a. Fantasy Girl on Twitter. So which teams are you stacking on today's main slate? We want to get your main pick, Garion.
Yeah, I think I'm really leaning towards the LA Chargers. I feel like every lineup I have has some version of a Chargers stack, whether it be 3 or 4 guys or even a mini Chargers stack with 2 guys. You just look at the implied total of this game, the second highest on the slate behind Patriots, Texans, and that Chiefs defense, which already was set to be exceedingly underwhelming this season, losing inarguably their best player in Eric Berry. I think they're right. 12.7 yards per reception last season, a lot of that without Berry again. And Phillip Rivers is my most often used quarterback. I think he's one of my locks for this slate. And the variety of receivers you can pair him with is also kind of interesting. I mean, obviously Keenan Allen's going to be an integral part of most Chargers stacks, a guy who led all wide receivers in red zone targets last season with 24. But, Mike Williams could definitely be a red zone target in this offense. Maybe even toss Antonio Gates out there as a real punt play at tight end. And then any lineup where I don't seem to have Phillip Rivers, I've got Melvin Gordon, who's at a great price point below $7,000. So I think the Chargers are just a team that I have a lot of exposure to.
The ageless Antonio Gates, Garion. Rosalie, which team are you stacking today?
Yeah, there were a lot of good choices, and I actually looked at the Chargers as well. Thing that scared me off of that, though, Phillip Rivers in that game last year, 2 games last year, had 6 interceptions to 1 touchdown against KC. And yeah, they don't have Eric Berry, but that scared me off. But there are 2 great games this weekend that I think are going to have great stacks in them. So I have to give an honorable mention here to the Watson-Hopkins stack. That's going to be a high-scoring game. They're going to go blow for blow. Watson can get stuff done on the ground too, so that's a good one. But I could not ignore the ultimate stack, which is Big Ben and AB this week against Cleveland. AB, if he matches what he did in that first game against Cleveland last year, he went 11 for 11 for 182 yards. That's what I want. You know what? It's a huge mismatch there in Cleveland trying to guard Antonio Brown. So, yeah, this is an Antonio Brown-driven stack, but Big Ben will get the numbers too. So that is my top stack this week.
R.I.P. Browns. All right, Reed, Sunday stack. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I do like both those. The Chargers are one of my favorite plays too, as well. If you look at Rivers, he's sort of the old vet when no one's talking about him. So I think he's going to take that into consideration. But my main one is Breeze and Thomas in New Orleans. We keep on talking about this, and I think a running theme is attack the weak defenses right week 1 before we know how these things pan out. And if you look at Thomas against Tampa Bay in his last 3 games, he essentially is locked in for six catches and close to 95 to 100 yards. And when you look at Breeze, a guy who, had some regression last year in terms of yards and attempts and completions, basically when he was back with the Chargers. I think he's in a prime bounce back season. I think a lot of people are going unnoticed. Breeze is going unnoticed to a lot of people. So if you want to use that as a GPP stack, it's going to cost you 30% of your salary cap. So it is pricey. But if you look at that defense, they are absolutely atrocious. Especially, again, we talked about it. They're terrible against the pass, and their cornerbacks don't really scare me. So I want to go with Breeze and Thomas.
Hey, Reed, real quick, just ripping through a couple of these Facebook questions. Patrick Brennan asks, DeAndre Hopkins or Antonio Brown? Talking the top two the highest priced wide receivers on the slate.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose between the two, I would go with Brown. If you look at Belichick, what's he going to want to do, right? He's going to want to take away your number one option. If Fuller's not out there, that's going to be Hopkins. So if they move coverage towards him, again, I know I'm sort of contradicting myself at the top where you want to play those running backs, but if I had to choose between the two, it's going to be Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh.
And you mentioned the weather, though, with this Pittsburgh game. Okay.
He's still going to get targets, though. He's their best player, so he's still going to get targets. You don't know. Hopkins, actually, against the Patriots, too, is not really that impressive. If you look at his last 6 starts, he's only averaging about 4 or 5 catches and around 50 yards. So Belichick knows how to scheme against Hopkins. He had terrible quarterbacks. Watson is not those guys previous, so I would just go to Antonio Brown. But that's a tough one.
All right, Reed, thanks. Thanks to our whole team.
Yep.
We'll be back in just a couple minutes, and we're going to play the NFL version of Put Up Your Bukes. You do not want to miss it.
Pat Mayo here with Sunday's blazing game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. Let's start at quarterback. A quarterback is likely going to be the highest scoring player. So let's go after the game projected to produce the most points. Patriots, Texans. Brady might be in line for the better real-life day, but Deshaun Watson is just fantasy gold. Underdogs in the game, Watson will be throwing the entire time, along with the ability to pile up those ever-so-valuable rushing totals. At running back, lock in David Johnson. If he can't get it going on the ground, don't worry about it. He'll more than make up for it through the air. You're looking at close to 25 total touches against a Washington team ranked 29th against the run in efficiency last season. Plus, no other Cardinals running back is going to even sniff the ball near the goal line. Lock in David Johnson. Finally, at receiver, load up on Keenan Allen. The Chiefs gave up the most DraftKings points to wideouts last year, and their defense only got worse. Plus, both offenses project to score in bunches in this contest, so expect more dropbacks than usual from Phillip Rivers, increasing Allen's opportunity. Those were your blazing game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Welcome back to the Sweat, guys. We got about 23 minutes until you have to have your lineups locked and set and ready to go. Just a couple injury updates that we brought you throughout the show to help you, to remind you here to not plug these guys in. Wide receiver Will Fuller for Houston, he will not play. Devontae Parker in Miami, another wide receiver, will not play. Sony Michel, the rookie running back in New England, we haven't seen all preseason, he will not be in the lineup. Neither will running back Marlon Mack in Indianapolis. Of course, all of our experts earlier and analysts, we're not super hot on Indianapolis either way.
Yeah, so keep in mind all that. We'll update you as more news comes in. But right now, we're going to welcome in Steve Buchanan and Julian Edlow. We're playing Put Up Your Bukes.
I love how we have you two together, the brothers from another
we just
mother.
Can't get rid of this segment. We're putting up our bukes on NFL Sundays now.
So listen, Put Up Your Bukes, the MLB version is hated by none, loved by all. It's a self-proclaimed highest rated segment. This is the first time we're doing the NFL version, so TBD on those ratings. But Steve, going to pick 3 value plays that you like and make DK point projections. And Julian, we're going to let you weigh in. So Steve, please put up your first NFL Buke.
Yeah, look at the viewership. It's crushing right now, so no surprise there. Look, I'm going to start with Sam Bradford for 18 DK fantasy points, 5,200. If you take a trip down to Sam Bradford hype city, it is absolutely deserted right now. Bradford is getting no hype at all. I think he's a fantastic pivot play off of Andy Dalton. It will come at the fraction of the ownership. Pairing him with David Johnson and Larry Fitz gives you about 4,900 to fill up the rest of your lineup. Throw a defense in there, and then you really get a good look at how much you have left over. I think it's completely doable with some of the value that are on this slate. This slate is full of value plays here. Let's not forget when Bradford was healthy, he averaged 258 passing yards and 20 touchdowns with the Vikings in 2016. Bradford being overlooked, I think, is a really, really bad play here. So I absolutely love Sam Bradford.
Julian, he's $5,200. He did also have knee issues last season. Does that concern you? Do you think he can get 18 fantasy points?
When does Sam Bradford not have an issue? I hope Steve is in all of my contests playing Bradford, because that'll really help me out. I have no interest here. The only appeal is that people are not going to be on Sam Bradford, but that's because he sucks and he always gets hurt. Why do you need to do this in week one? I keep saying week one. It gives us too much value. I could have given you 100 hidden jewels today, and here we are talking about a walking garbage can in Sam Bradford on week one. We don't need this. Fine. I would rather play Andy Dalton, but we can throw that name out because he's 5,800 and you have to pay up for him. These other names in here, Tyrod Taylor, even with the weather, he's got his legs on the ground there in Cleveland, 5,400. Ryan Tannehill, 5,300 going against the Titans. Case Keenum going against a very overrated Seattle defense in Denver at 5,100. Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be hucking the ball for his life at $5,000, trying to catch up to the Saints, who are going to score 1 million points against them. And here we are talking about Sam Bradford. No, thank you. Stick to baseball, bro.
Oh, okay.
Wow, he just hit you with that line. Where you at, Steve?
A walking trash can.
I mean, he talks about his Hidden Jewels segment. Nobody even knows it because nobody watches when your segment's on this. Don't even know what Hidden Jewels is. Let's just move on. It's a 2-hour show, I know that, but there are time constraints here. So, Julian, you calm down over there. We're going to go with Delaney Walker for 13 DK fantasy points. Honestly, I think I might be undervaluing him here because I think there's nothing wrong with this play at all. The majority of people are going to be paying down at tight end today, and I totally get it. You look at Jack Doyle, he's a very enticing play at 3,600, so if you need to save some salary, I totally get it here. But the Dolphins allowed the most average DK fantasy points last season to opposing tight end, 16.2. That was the highest in the league. Walker led the Titans in receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 seasons, averaged 7 targets per game last season. There's just not enough hype about Walker. I think that's crazy. Just like with Bradford, contrary to whatever Julian says, I wasn't even listening. So I think Walker is a fantastic play here.
What do you think about this one, Julian? I mean, he's got some numbers to back it up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give Steve credit that this is definitely a price range where you're going to get great ownership numbers on Walker. But no, I don't have any interest here. I will go with the masses and pay up for Gronk or pay down for whoever it may be, Jack Doyle in that 3,000 range. Look, Steve gave the numbers. Yeah, Miami is not very good against tight ends. Delaney Walker happened to play against him last year. He caught 3 passes for 25 yards. So he wasn't able to exploit that matchup last year. It doesn't mean it's going to happen again, but it's certainly not encouraging. There are just more tight ends I like on the board. Walker will have a fine game. Maybe he gets 9-10 DK points. He's got to get into the end zone to get 13. I don't see it happening. I'll take the under again. I'm looking at a lot more tight ends than Delaney Walker.
All right. Sounds like your second Buke. Stirring up some controversy, too. How about your third, Steve?
This is why Julian doesn't win everything. He has to just go with the rest of the field. He can't be different. But that's okay. Maybe he'll like Bruce Ellington at 3,400.
Bro.
I'm giving picks. We'll talk about Bruce Ellington here for 12 DK fantasy points. You know, now that Will Fuller has officially been ruled out, this is a great spot for Ellington here. This is a really cheap way to grab some exposure to a game with a projected point total of over 50 points today. Last season without Fuller, Ellington saw his target percentage jump up to 12.8%, up from his usual 8.5 with Fuller on the field. Look, Hopkins is the biggest benefit of this game. We all know that. But the Patriots are likely going to be suffocating with coverage today, so someone's going to have to be open. I think Ellington can be that guy. I think it opens up a lot of great opportunities for him. And look, he doesn't have to do much with the salary he's tagged at, so I absolutely love Ellington here.
Yeah, $3,400, Julian. Do you think this is a good value play?
Yeah, all right. Steve has me on board here with Bruce Ellington. At 3,400, you just can't lose here. You look at the matchup. We were talking about Hopkins in that previous segment and how the Patriots are going to want to take him out of the game. And that leaves Bruce Ellington as the only other really capable wide receiver of doing anything. And that's exactly what he did last season in this matchup at New England in week 3. Caught 4 passes for 59 yards and a touchdown. He was priced at 3,300 that week. So it's nearly an identical matchup, an identical price point, and I expect something pretty similar to happen. So if he puts up that line where he scored 16 DK points last year, Steve is right. That is over 12. I am with him here. I got to give him credit where credit is due.
Wow, that doesn't happen all the time. Julian, before we cut you loose, one Facebook question coming in Roy Ender needs a flex out of these options. Hearns, Alfred Morris, Njoku, Latavius Murray, or Galladay?
That is a lot of guys, and it's a lot of guys that I don't really like.
Okay.
I don't even remember all of them. I like Njoku kind of as a sleeper. Start over. Start a new team, bro.
Wow. I will let him know that.
We're going to tell him that, all right? Julian, thank you so much for fighting with Steve. We're going to say goodbye to you now. We're going to welcome in Garion for Thorn in My Side. So, Garion, going to pick your top 3 fades, and Steve's going to weigh in.
Garion, well, you look great, by the way, in Pat's studio.
Yeah.
It's a better angle than, your typical, iPhone camera.
My bedroom?
Yeah, your bedroom. You have a great bedroom, though. I don't know that, but...
So
go ahead, Garion.
Who knows? I'm going to do Steve a favor here off the top because I know he doesn't want to talk about the weather in this Pittsburgh-Cleveland game. So I'm not even going to mention it when I'm talking about the fact that Smith-Schuster is not in any of my lineups today. Initially, Tuesday, Wednesday, this fade started out just because Buddy Calhoun's a really good slot cornerback. You go back into the numbers from last season, not a single cornerback in the NFL allowed fewer yards per route covered than Buddy Calhoun at 0.61. He's one of very few players the Browns actually retained from their winless season last year. I think that says a lot considering the turnover they've had on their roster. And also, this really speaks to how many players I think can be viable with Ben Roethlisberger on the road. You go back the last 22 times he's played a 1 p.m. contest on the road. The under has hit in that game 18 of 22 times. And that under, for reasons we won't get into, is now down to 40. So Antonio Brown's fine. I love James Conner. There's only so many Steelers that can be viable with Ben Roethlisberger under these conditions, and I think the number is those two. So Juju is not an option today.
Wow, Steve, what do you have here? Because earlier in this show, you were super high on Juju Smith-Schuster.
Oh, that is such a lie. Don't lie to the masses. I mean, the weather. I'm so sick of the weather. Who gives a crap, all right? Just cross this game out and be done with it. I mean, I did mention earlier that without Bell on the field, Juju actually had the biggest target share at 24%, which is 2% higher than Brown. But look, Ben's going to be focusing on Brown when he's passing. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. I will say, though, the ownership is most likely going to be on your side, so I guess I can see some GPP appeal there. But at the price point that Juju is at, I mean, you guys have guys like Chris Hogan, Stephon Diggs are both within $400 in salary in much better spots here. I got to agree with Garion. He's a much better guy than Julian. I'm definitely keeping Juju off the roster.
Garion, what's your beef with Zeke?
Zeke's just in a weird spot for me today. I know there's been a lot of talk that he's going to be more involved in the passing game, and I think that's going to be vital because the Panthers just don't give up rushing yards when Luke Kuechly is healthy. Going back the last 2 seasons, just 2 100-yard rushers given up by Carolina. This game is in Carolina. That's already a negative game script for an underdog Cowboys team for their running back. I mean, just look at the price point Zeke is at. Kamara and David Johnson, I feel like, are absolute locks. I know they're about $1,000 more than than Zeke Elliott, but you even go down about $700. You find Melvin Gordon at 6'8". So sure, he's going to be a pivot play today. And Zeke Elliott is never at a question for the amount of volume he's going to get. I just feel like this is a bad spot. It's a bad script until I actually see him involved in the passing game. I'm not really going to believe it.
Steve, can you give us a reason to roster Elliott at 7,700?
Yeah, I mean, Garen really nailed it here. I mean, the grand scheme of things, you're paying up for running back. Zeke is at the bottom of the list here on who you have on this slate. Look, you got DJ, you got Fournette, you got Kamara. I mean, these are all options that I would choose over Zeke. And like he did mention, they're looking to get him involved in the passing game. I need to see that first before I really believe that. I mean, they've had opportunities to do this before. I mean, it's not like, they've gotten much better. They've gotten even worse. They didn't have many receiving options to begin with, even with Des Bryant. But I mean, I think that should have been done before. I really need to see that happen first. Against a Panthers team, this is not a team I really want to watch and pay up for to see this experiment and if it actually happens tonight. So, yeah, I'm definitely not on Zeke today either. Like I said, Garen's just a good guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Wow. This is the complete opposite of a segment between Jules and Bukes right now. All right,
the studio gives me a lot of credit, I think. It builds up my hype.
Yeah,
well, don't worry. We'll get into something here. Go ahead.
It's great lighting on you, too. Yeah, seriously, your third thorn, I know this is going to stir the pot.
It's really just a price point thing because there's not a lot I can say about Tom Brady being in a negative spot. This is a great spot. It's the highest total game on the slate. Tom Brady's been doing this for about 17 decades, so we know he can put up fantasy points. I'm just worried about the price tag. I am someone who comes from a GPP philosophy where you do not pay up for quarterback, and I just think there's so many viable options below $6,500 on this slate, even if you want to ignore Phillip Rivers, even if you don't want to touch Andy Dalton, which I totally understand considering how many times he let down in a quality spot last season. I mean, Steve's already talked about Sam Bradford being viable. I think Patrick Mahomes is kind of viable considering the just injury trouble we've seen with the Los Angeles Chargers defense so far this week. And even Russell Wilson is 6'2" against the Denver Broncos defense that I don't think is any good. I mean, this team could not cover running backs or tight ends last season. The only reason they could cover receivers is because Aqib Talib was on the team, and he's not even there anymore. So I think Wilson, who's going to see a huge share of this offense when they realize Chris Carson can't run the ball against that front seven, I think the volume for him is going to be great. So I'm just not paying up for Brady. This is not about Brady being bad today. I just think other quarterbacks are going to hit more value.
You know who is paying up for Brady? Go ahead, Steve.
Man, I mean, I feel like Gary just listed every single quarterback that's on the DK list today, why they'd be better. I mean, four. You took up like 5 minutes of time on that. I mean, look, how do you not like Brady in this spot? Like in GPPs, okay, I'll give you that. Maybe you can't play Brady there because of the price point, but cash games, I mean, Brady is the guy. When was the last time that he scored like less than 10 DK fantasy points or he didn't reach his value? Yeah, he's getting older and he doesn't look as great. His receiving core isn't as good as it was, but Brady has consistently shown over and over and over he makes it work when it counts. This game is going to have a monster points in this one here. I don't see how you can fade Brady, especially in cash. If you don't want to pay up, I understand that, but he is Mr. Consistent. Doesn't matter who his receivers are, he still makes it work. I mean, you just have to. There's so much upside here, even at his price point. Garion, you lost me on this one. That was just horrible.
Wouldn't you rather have
Guys,
like Kamara?
We got to cut you off. I'm
Calm
so
down, Gary.
sorry. We're going to talk to you again in just a minute because right now we got to bring in Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler for Off the Wall. So which players are you going way off the board for this week? Reed, hit us with one pick. And no
Targeting
Reed.
this-
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Volume.
All right,
Start
start
over.
over, Reed.
Ted Ginn. Ted Ginn is my guy. I've been hammering this Saints game quite a bit. Tampa Bay's defense is terrible, and you get Ted Ginn against Grimes is out. So you get him against a rookie quarterback or rookie cornerback, and he's in line for potentially a big game. So I'm going with Ginn.
Jeff, off the wall pick.
Going Matt Breida, I just feel like people are overlooking the fact he's stepping right into the Jerick McKinnon role, which everyone was super excited about at the start of the season. So Matt Breida, very comparable player. I think he's going to get heavily involved in the pass game, and it's actually a good matchup if you look at some of the advanced metrics there with Anthony Barr and his potential matchups. So I like Matt Breida as a real good off-the-wall pick.
All right, guys, we have history now on the sweat. We're going 4 box.
4.
Wow,
Yeah!
Look at this. Gary and Steve are in. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Reed and
Sorry
Jeff.
for cutting you off, Gary, but I was just so
I'm
excited
gonna
for
slump down
working
a little bit.
up
There we go.
a sweat, guys.
This is amazing. So I hope someone just screen grabbed that because I don't know if we're ever going to
that
see it
was
again,
huge.
depending on how well this segment goes. Guys,
Yeah.
we're working up a sweat with all 4 of you, so we're closing in on a lock. But who is a guy you are high on maybe earlier in the week, but now may want to pivot off of because of recent news or
Weather!
Or weather. Oh, no, weather, Steve.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to start with you, Reed.
Yeah, it's Dalvin Cook. I think if you look at the position that they're in going against San Francisco, their linebacking core is pretty banged up. And Dalvin Cook, especially the Minnesota Vikings being a favorite, you would tend to think that it leans towards the running game. But we don't know. We don't know how they're going to roll him out. Latavius Murray the reports have been that he's going to be part of the game script, part of the game theory, part of the scheme in Minnesota. And he could always pilfer red zone touches. So Dalvin Cook at that price does scare me a little bit. He's a great player, but we just don't know in terms of his injury how they're going to roll him out in terms of his touches. So that would be the guy that I'm moving a little bit off of.
Do you have a pivot play for that then?
I mean, you can go Murray with GPPs, but at the same time, like I just rather go elsewhere. James Conner, we talked about it. James Conner, Carlos Hyde, those other guys that are cheaper, you can go to just because of the not weather, but weather.
Ooh, Steve, we're going to go to you next because we're talking weather.
Our meteorologist.
Yeah, our meteorologist, Steve. Who are you not so hot on anymore? What do you think about Cook also, huh?
Well, first of all, Julian couldn't even make the 4 box, so let that say what he said. But yeah, I was high on Rex Burkhead like everybody else, and I've been leaning more towards Jeremy Hill. Look, this could totally blow up in our face, but he's worthy of a contrarian play just at 3,300. Look, if it comes to fruition that Burke is eased back into action as it was reported, Hill could absolutely get some goal line work here. Wouldn't it be so Patriots that we have all this hype about Rex and then just go the total opposite direction and go Jeremy Hill? That would just be exactly our luck. But hopefully you jump on the Jeremy Hill train, because I think it's one that could really go off here. Getting him in large GPPs, there'll be fractions of an ownership there. So I think Hill is someone I really like in this GPPs today.
Julian, how about you? Or not Julian, I'm sorry. Garion.
Julian, let's go to. Never mind.
He didn't make the 4 box. Couldn't even make this segment.
Well, what you guys can't see is there's a 5th box just right off the screen.
Fired.
Just kidding.
Hey, Julian. Garion, what about you, bud?
I hate to do this to Steve, but I just got to be honest. I had Antonio Brown, and I would say about 55% of my lineups to start the day, and it's probably dwindled down to about 25%. I'm not off him entirely. I know Reed was talking about this earlier, and he's absolutely right. Just because there is wind, which is a concern, doesn't mean he's not still going to see the targets. And that's kind of the important part here. The volume is still going to be there. He's still the best receiver in the NFL. I'm not off him entirely, but I certainly do have less exposure to him. And in his stead, I've kind of just picked up on Michael Thomas. I think Thomas is like one of the lock cash game plays of this slate, along with AJ Green. They're just so safe and in such good matchups with the same, maybe not Antonio Brown level of volume, but similar wide receiver 1 types of volume. So yeah, I've slowly kind of weaned myself off Antonio Brown in the last hour or two.
Reed, how does that make you feel? Because earlier you were feeling this dude.
Antonio Brown?
Yeah, Antonio Brown.
Yeah. How can you not? He's been the best receiver in fantasy for the last 4 seasons, so of course. But you just, again, and Pat mentioned it, right? It's not so much the rain that concerns you, it's the wind. And if that's the case, what we didn't talk about is Big Ben, right? His road splits, and that could have been Todd Haley just not wanting to pass the ball on the road. We just don't know. But his road splits have been terrible. So road splits, along with the wind gusts, leads me to believe that, he's still going to get his 8 to 10 targets. But, it's that I think it's the right play.
Jeff, we have 5 minutes. Are you freaking out about anybody?
Not Adrian Peterson.
Don't freak out, all right? But freak out a little bit.
Freak out about, if anything, fantasy related. Come on,
Really? I think everybody's panicking a little bit, so come on.
Half of my players are going to get hurt in the first 5 minutes anyways.
Oh, my God.
So positive.
All right, so, Jeff, so anybody that you're going to pivot to? No? Yes?
Yeah, Look, I like the Michael Thomas thing. I agree. I think he's a cash game. I'm a little bit pivoting off of AJ Green personally. Everyone likes the Bengals. They like the Bengals' cheap defense. They like John Ross as like a sleeper pick. Not all these players can go off this week. And, the Colts defense isn't great, but they're probably going to be primarily focused with limiting AJ Green a little bit. Why not pivot to John Ross or Joe Mixon and stack them with the Bengals defense? There's just so many ways that the Bengals can score in this game. I just feel like AJ Green is the most expensive. It worries me a little bit paying up for him, especially when there's other options like a Michael Thomas, who's in such a good matchup against a Bucs secondary. He doesn't even have Brett Grimes. So I would rather pivot to Michael Thomas there. AJ Green scares me a little bit. I'm probably going to have almost no exposure. I just like the other pieces of the Bengals offense. They're better. Like I said, Mixon and the Bengals D for me, one of the best tournament stacks you can make today.
Are you guys working up a sweat a little bit that it would appear our producers placed the Americans in the top boxes and the Canadians?
Yeah, what do you guys think that
them?
What does that mean?
Geographically not accurate.
Yeah. Unless someone's in Portland, apparently that is actually, I've heard many times, more north than Toronto.
Weird. They're definitely
studio
not.
knowledge. Gary with the studio knowledge. I love it.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to pick up on.
Blazers fans do not like We the North. This is something I've heard very often.
Steve, what a weird thing to pick up on.
I'm probably closer to Hawaii than I am to Garion, so it's
America.
Guys, we got a few minutes left. Before we get your slate approved real quick, I want to rip through a couple more Facebook questions. Jeff, Connor or Barber as a value pick? Dak Stewart is asking.
GPP is definitely Peyton Barber. If it's just a cash game, straight cash game play, go James Conner.
Steve, we have Steve asking, Dalton and Green, I feel are great plays. I love the Bengals. What does the panel think? Steve, what do you think for Steve?
I mean, I think we're all pretty high on the Bengals, except for maybe Jeff, who's getting a little wet feet there. But I mean, yeah, I love the Bengals overall. Green, Mixon, I think it's some great plays here.
Reed, flex position, Sanders or Woods?
I'm going to go with Woods here, just because I mean that's a prime spot for Denver against like we talked about, an overrated defense. But you got to go Woods here in that offense. I mean, you're talking about the Raiders in that spot, so Woods for me.
Would you go Stills over Sanders as well? I believe Emerson's asking this one.
Next question.
Next question. All right, let's get to our slate approved picks.
Okay, yeah,
really
90
quick.
seconds.
Why not? Roll through these. Read slate approved.
It's going to be Alvin Kamara. I mean, it's like a broken record. I'm playing those Saints.
Jeff, what about you?
Tyreek Hill. Don't be a wimp. Just play the best wide receiver in the game.
The biggest Chiefs fan in Canada.
I'm going to go with David Johnson, just as a kind of mini pivot off of Kamara, who's a great play. I get it, but more carries, more touches, more snaps. David Johnson.
Steve, what about you?
Larry Fitz, baby. Larry Fitz.
Wow.
Wow.
I love it.
This has been
Julian,
great.
what do you think?
Yeah. Oh, wait. And to Julian. And
Poor
Julian.
Come on. We
Can
can't
we-
pick on him. We can't pick on him.
I know,
Actually,
he's got a
actually,
family.
we can.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Since when do you care about that?
He has kids.
I don't at all.
He has kids. How dare you? My
All
gosh.
right, boys. Good luck. NFL is here, and I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing all of your faces, hopefully in the quad box once again next Sunday morning.
Yeah.
11:30 here on DraftKings.
Yeah, is Facebook back? Facebook's back, I think. Facebook
Yeah.
is back.
Yep,
Yeah.
for
So,
sure.
what'd you learn today? I mean, I learned a lot.
Yeah, so one of my biggest takeaways, besides all the fantasy stuff, is just don't talk to Steve about weather, because he will hate you already more than you may not know he hates you.
I found out that our experts are indeed experts because they gave some good advice.
This was awesome.
This was awesome. This was The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia.
We're going to be back
Back
here.
a lot.
Yeah,
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. Jessie will be here. And yeah, watch.
Bye.
Deuces.
Later. Second.
You're good now.
Can you put the second in there? Yeah, I thought I pasted it, but I don't know what happened.